Americans are so gullible. No, you won't accept communism outright. But we'll keep feeding you small doses of socialism until you finally wake up and find you already have communism. We won't have to fight you. We'll so weaken your economy until you fall like overripe fruit into our hands.
Are we here? We were warned that the communists were not going to go away. They were just getting started. Ezra Taft Benson knew that serious threat. He saw it firsthand. He knew communists were in the government. He knew they were in the government. You know who this is, right? This is Joseph McCarthy. You know who he is. Do you know who this guy is? Do you know this guy? Ever heard of him? How about him? Boy, you should, America. These people were communist spies. Let me read their positions. This is Harry Dexter here. He worked for the Treasury Secretary Morgenthau. Recognize that name? Probably not. Probably haven't been taught. Morgenthau. F.D.R. This is Alger Hiss. You might have heard that name before. He worked in the Department of Agriculture. Gee, Department of Agriculture. That's Ezra Taft Benson. He worked in the Department of Agriculture. He was also in committees and DOJ, the State Department. This is Lori Curry here. He worked in the Treasury Department, assistant to the president. I'd say there's probably some pretty good intel there. Do you think? In 1938, the House Committee on Un-American Activities was formed. 1938. Not by this guy, but by this guy. Martin Dies. He's a Democrat. Did you know that? 1938. Not him, him. In fact, all the things that he wrote into the president later, Joseph McCarthy, all of these things came from him. But this guy had credibility. So they just pushed it all aside. They stonewalled him. What do they say about McCarthy? Oh, he's conducting witch hunts, smearing innocent victims, spreading hysteria. On February 11th, 1950, McCarthy wrote this telegram to the president, President Truman, in which he explained, I have in my possession the names of 57 communists who are in the State Department at present. As you've seen tonight from Hollywood to class to the Oval Office, Marxism is alive and well. It is thriving here in the United States. You might know what it is, but our children do not. We just think that somehow or another they know, but they do not. And they are not being taught the evil of communism and socialism. Progressives do know what it means, and they can mutate it. It always mutates. It goes undercover. Vladimir Putin was a lieutenant colonel. There he is. KGB. Putin now has videos made glorifying him. He's pictured riding shirtless on his horseback. The guy was a KGB agent. Where was the turning point? I believe America's turning point was Joseph McCarthy. And again, with the Berlin Wall falling down. Joseph McCarthy was so discredited, it made it almost into a joke. And when the Berlin Wall fell down, we beat it. And so now we disregarded it. Well, here we go again, down the same road. I want to bring in M. Stanton Evans. He is the author of Blacklisted by History, the untold story of Senator Joe McCarthy. America, this is such an important turning point. Tell me, when you went to go look for the documents on Joseph McCarthy, what did you find or not find?
I found a lot of stuff missing, a lot of stuff that had been censored, a lot of stuff that was in the records in one place, but blacked out in another place. Mostly what I found was that the FBI files, which backed up what McCarthy was saying, had been withheld for 50 years. And we now have them, or many of them, and they show essentially that he was right in general. There was a massive penetration of the government, and that it was covered up, and that he threatened that cover-up. And that's why he was isolated, demonized, and destroyed. Right. That's the technique.
How surprised were you when you first started doing research on how much has been edited and buried. We don't even know who we are.
I going in was not exactly naive, but I got to say, I have something I call Evans' law of inadequate paranoia, which says that no matter how bad you think something is, when you look into it, it's always worse. And this has been totally vindicated. Every time I turn around, I'm finding something else that makes me say, I can't believe that. I'm like you, I can't believe this.
Blacklisted by History, the untold story of Senator Joe McCarthy. Please, please get this book. How old is this? But
it came out in 2007.
Okay. It is, it's frightening. It's frightening, but it is the truth. And here's why you need to know history, because it is repeating itself. And I want to talk a little bit about the parallels between the Obama administration and the F.D.R. administration as it comes into play with communists. We have Marxist, Maoists, communists in and around the White House, influencing and actually working with. We had that with F.D.R. Both denied it at the time. Yes or no?
Well, you know a lot more about what's happening now than I do. I tell people if it happened after 1954, I don't know anything about it. I'm stuck in the 50s doing this stuff, but I've listened to you, and I know you know a lot about this. But I know what happened back then, and there are a lot of similarities. And one of the things that is similar is this use of a crisis to railroad every kind of radical thing possible that otherwise would never be feasible.
Okay, let me talk to you about this man, Cass Sunstein.
Yes.
I think I've said, and nobody in the press, you know, they don't even question why I even say this. They just discredit me for it. I think he's the most dangerous man in America.
Sunstein, the way you talked about this requiring links of internet, you know, to the other side.
He talks about going and infiltrating and discrediting and.
I listened to every word you said about that, and I said, this is because, and one of many things about it, to exactly parallel the silencing part to a document that is almost 50 years old called the Reuther Memorandum, which was issued back in the Kennedy era, authored by a man named Victor Reuther, who was the brother of Walter Reuther, one of the people that I think you've been looking at with some interest. And this was basically how to silence conservatives in all departments of our life, but particularly on the airwaves. And out of that came the Fairness Doctrine, which said, in essence, that if you put on the air a program by a conservative that is paid, you then have to put on an equal time program free for the opposite point of view. Very similar to what you read from
with Cass
that
Sunstein.
gentleman.
Okay.
And that was 1963.
This article came out in Town Hall magazine, and it's on me, and it's called The Anatomy of a Smear, How the Left is Fighting to Silence Glenn Beck. And it is amazing. It's written by Meredith Jessup. It is an amazing article. The only article that I've read that actually uses the facts and say, no, 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 here's what happened, here's how they used it. This is a system, and they have done it to people in that entire timeline there.
Well, you're so right. It's happened both domestically and in foreign policy. Anti-communist leaders like Mihailovich in Yugoslavia, Chiang Kai-shek in China, and others were delegitimized by this very same technique. A Soviet agent named James Klugman was responsible for sending back to Churchill this information that Mihailovich, who was the anti-communist in Yugoslavia, was no good. He was collaborating with the Nazis, and only Tito was fighting against the Nazis. Completely false. Churchill cut off Mihailovich. They gave all their aid to Tito. Yugoslavia goes communist. Soviet agent named Solomon Adler, sitting in Chongqing, China in 1944, sending back similar reports about Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang Kai-shek is not fighting the Japanese. He's a collaborator. Only the communists are fighting the Japanese. Well, then cut off Chiang Kai-shek, give the aid to the communists. China falls to the communists. It's a pattern.
It's over and over again. America, just have no fear. Have no fear. Know the truth. The truth shall set you free. It's going to make you miserable first, but the truth shall set you free. Thank you, sir. God bless you.